Hello everyone. You're listening to Relaxing Stories, where I share calm, soothing tales to help you sleep peacefully. So before you drift off, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, I'm curious, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing from you. Now, find a cozy spot, get comfortable, and let your body relax. There is a place that cannot be found on any map. Not because it is hidden, nor because it is forbidden, but because it is forgotten. Not forgotten in a sad, lost way, but forgotten like the way we forget dreams when we wake up. Still warm, still real, but distant, soft around the edges. This place lies just past the edge of the village of Winter Hollow. Beyond the stone bridge, where the river slows to a hush and the sky turns a deeper blue than most have seen, is the beginning of a forest. Not a dark, twisted forest, but a quiet, sighing one. Tall pines lean over the path like old friends telling secrets. Ferns as tall as chairs line the trail. Moss grows so thick it could be mistaken for velvet. No one in Winter Hollow speaks of what lies beyond. They simply say, "It's not for rushing." And that's where Elliot went one slow, rainy afternoon. Elliot wasn't particularly brave or particularly clever or even particularly strong. But he had two things that mattered more than most. He was curious and he was kind. He had no plan that day, only a bag of scones his grandmother made, a small green lantern, and his father's old wool coat. The sleeves hung past his fingers, and the collar smelled faintly of pipe smoke and lemon soap. The rain was soft, not a storm, just the kind of steady drizzle that makes the world feel like it's under a spell. It pattered gently on the canopy above and whispered along the path. Elliot walked slowly. He noticed everything. The spiral pattern on a snail's shell, the way raindrops made silver ripples in puddles, a mushroom as wide as his hand, glowing faintly beneath an old log. And then, as if the forest had waited for him to be ready, the path widened into a clearing. There, at its very center, sat the clockmaker's cottage. It was unlike any house Elliot had ever seen. Its walls were patchworks of wood, stone, and brick, each part appearing to have been added at different times in different styles. A chimney leaned slightly left, a weather vane shaped like a cat spun lazily in the rain breeze. But most striking of all were the sounds. Dozens, no hundreds, of clocks ticked inside, some fast, some slow, none quite in sync. But together, their rhythms formed a kind of lullaby. Elliot stepped closer. The windows were fogged from the inside. A warm golden glow flickered through the glass. He lifted a hand to knock, but before his knuckles touched the wood, the door creaked inward. A bell tinkled above the frame, one that sounded like laughter trapped in a teacup. He stepped inside. The warmth hit him first, not just from the hearth fire, though that was crackling merrily, but from something deeper, a kind of welcome, like the cottage knew him. Clocks lined every wall, towering grandfather clocks with lion-carved feet. Small wristwatches laid delicately on velvet. Whimsical cuckoo clocks shaped like birds, boats, and stars, all ticking. And there, sitting in a rocking chair near the fire, was the clockmaker. She looked very old, but not in a crumbling way. In the way trees are old. In the way oceans are old. Her skin was lined but glowing. Her hair was a gentle cloud, tied back with a red ribbon. Her eyes, when they met Elliot's, were the pale gray of stormy skies, and just as full of movement. "You're right on time," she said softly. "For what?" Elliot asked. "For tea, of course." She rose slowly, her joints popping like popcorn. "Come sit. You must be cold." The kitchen was nothing like the tidy white rooms from cookbooks or magazines. It was alive with memory. Copper pans, worn and well-loved, hung from dark wooden beams. The walls were crowded with spice jars, each labeled in a careful hand, and some labeled in languages Elliot didn't recognize. A loaf of bread rested under a towel on the windowsill. There was a cat curled beside the oven, so still Elliot thought it might be part of the cottage itself until it stretched and blinked slowly at him. A kettle hummed on the stove with a sound that matched the rain on the window panes. The clockmaker moved quietly, efficiently, placing a thick ceramic teapot on the table. The teacups were mismatched, one painted with roses, the other with strange constellations Elliot had never seen in the sky. She poured the tea, lavender and honey, warm and soft, and offered him a biscuit shaped like a moon. Elliot bit into it and it crumbled gently in his mouth. Sweet, but not too sweet, like something made more to comfort than impress. "So," she said, folding her hands, "what brings you past the edge of the map?" Elliot paused. "I don't know," he said. "I just walked. Not many people walk here. Fewer still arrive. I didn't mean to intrude." "You didn't," she said gently. "Some doors only open for those who were meant to find them." Elliot looked around again, soaking in the room. The ticking from the other room was quieter here, but still present, like a heartbeat beneath everything. "You fix clocks?" he asked. "I listen to them," she replied. "Some want mending. Some want rest. Some want to tell you something. You just have to know how to listen." He looked down at his tea. "Do they talk to you?" "Not with words," she said, smiling. "But I hear them all the same." Rain streaked the window. The cat purred. The fire cracked softly in the other room. Outside, the sky darkened to a deeper blue. Inside, time didn't seem to move at all. The rest of the evening passed like a gentle exhale. After tea, the clockmaker showed Elliot where he could leave his coat to dry and offered him a thick knitted shawl that smelled faintly of pine and lavender. He sank into a worn armchair by the fire while she shuffled through the cottage, lighting little lanterns in every corner. Shadows danced softly on the wooden walls, stretching long and curling like cat tails around the clock faces. "Do you sleep here?" Elliot asked, his voice hushed by the ticking. The clockmaker smiled. "Sometimes. Time has many rooms, Elliot. Some of them sleep. Some of them wake. Some of them remember." He didn't fully understand what she meant, but it felt true. Then, after a pause that felt intentional, she said, "There's something you should see. Something upstairs." Elliot looked up. He hadn't noticed a staircase until now. It blended perfectly with the dark beams of the cottage, curling up into the loft above like a carved ribbon. The clockmaker reached for a key that hung around her neck. It was old, so old the grooves on it had worn smooth, and she handed it to him without a word. "Go ahead," she said. "The attic waits." He climbed slowly. The stairs creaked, but not in protest. More like they whispered to each other, "Someone is coming. Someone who listens." The attic door was small and narrow, painted a soft blue, almost the color of the sky before sunrise. Elliot slid the key into the lock, turned it, and felt the soft click. The door swung open without a sound. Inside, the attic was filled with light, strange for a rainy evening. It streamed from an arched window at the far end of the room, casting golden beams over a collection of forgotten things: trunks wrapped in twine, glass jars filled with star-like dust, paper birds hanging from threads, a harp with no strings, and books. Hundreds of books. And in the very center stood a single clock. It was unlike the others. Tall, taller than Elliot. Its frame was made of polished dark wood, but the carvings were strange, winding vines that moved slightly when you weren't looking, shapes of stars that shimmered faintly. The face of the clock was blank. No numbers. No hands. Only a smooth circle of frosted glass. Elliot stepped closer. And the moment he did, the room changed. The light shifted. The ticking of the other clocks faded, replaced by a deep, slow rhythm that pulsed through the floorboards. He looked into the clock's face and saw not his reflection, but memories. A birthday when he turned 5 and his mother made him a lopsided cake. His father lifting him high into the air on the beach. A night when he cried under a blanket because the world felt too big. Then stranger memories. Ones that weren't his. An old man standing in snow holding a lantern. A girl in green boots whispering to a tree. A fox with eyes that sparkled like constellations. He blinked. The visions vanished. Footsteps came up behind him. "She's different, that one," the clockmaker said softly. "Not broken. Not stopped. Just waiting." For what? For someone to name the hour. Elliot didn't speak. His fingers hovered over the glass. "You don't need to rush it," she whispered. "No clock likes to be rushed." He nodded, stepping back. The golden light began to dim, and the clock grew still once more. Downstairs, the cottage hummed. "Come," she said, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "I'll show you where guests rest." And so, beneath beams painted with twilight, Elliot followed the clockmaker down the winding stairs. He felt changed, not in a loud way, but in the kind that sits in your bones and waits to bloom. As he curled under a quilt stitched with stars and moons, the clock sang softly around him. Rain whispered on the rooftop, and somewhere, in the attic above, the blank-faced clock ticked once. Elliot awoke not with a start, but with a sense. A tingle at the base of his spine, a gentle awareness that something important was happening. The room was cloaked in velvety darkness, the kind that only appears when every candle has guttered out, when even the fire is sleeping. Yet the cottage wasn't silent. It breathed. The clocks ticked, not wildly, not out of order, but together, harmonizing in a deep, deliberate rhythm. It was as if all the clocks in the cottage, from the smallest pocket watch to the great brass pendulum above the door, had found a single heartbeat to follow. The midnight hour had arrived. A faint glow shimmered from beneath the attic door. Elliot rose slowly. His bare feet sank into the soft rug beneath him. He felt no fear, only the pull of mystery, warm and certain. He wrapped the shawl tighter around his shoulders and padded quietly through the moonlit cottage. The stairs awaited. Each step was a sigh, a creak of memory. Elliot felt the hush in the air, the kind that holds stories not yet told. When he reached the top, the blue attic door stood slightly open, a golden-white mist curling from its edge like breath in winter. He pushed it open. The attic had transformed. Where once were shelves and trunks, there now stood a circle of chairs. 7 of them. In the center, the blank-faced clock glowed softly. But it was no longer blank. Numbers had begun to form, faint and flickering, like starlight drawn with a trembling hand. And the hands of the clock, they were forming too. Slowly, gracefully. In one of the chairs sat the clockmaker. Her red ribbon glowed like ember silk. She gestured for Elliot to come in. "You're not late," she said gently. "No one is at midnight." Elliot sat beside her. Then he noticed the others. 6 other chairs. 6 other guests, each with eyes wide in wonder. A girl with braids and snow on her sleeves. An elderly man who held a map with no markings. A child with golden spectacles and a notebook. A tall woman in a cloak of moth wings. A boy humming to himself with dirt on his boots. Strangers. And yet not. They all watched the clock. "It's beginning," the clockmaker whispered. The midnight hour always chooses its storytellers. The hands of the great clock clicked once. And then a voice. Not from the clockmaker, not from anyone in the room, but from the space between ticks. From time itself. "Who will remember?" it asked. The girl with the braids raised her hand. "I will." And suddenly she was gone. Or perhaps not gone, but within. She stood in the center of the circle, and her body shimmered with the light of 1,000 stars. She began to speak. A story. A tale of snow spirits and whispering trees. Of losing something and finding something else. Her voice was music. Her memories spilled out like soft watercolors, painting the air. When she finished, the clock ticked again. "Who will dream?" asked the voice. The child with spectacles stood. "I will." One by one, they rose. One by one, they told their stories, true ones, dreamed ones, old ones, new ones. Elliot listened, heart wide open. He felt their words settle into his skin, like gentle rain. Then the voice spoke a final time. "Who will carry this forward?" And before he could think, Elliot said, "I will." All eyes turned to him. The clockmaker smiled. The attic changed again. The chairs faded. The mist swirled. And Elliot felt a warmth in his chest, a ticking that wasn't quite a heartbeat. He looked down. In his hand was a watch, small, silver, and ticking perfectly. On the back, one word was engraved. "Remember, time is a gift," the clockmaker said. "It comes softly, asks nothing, and offers everything. Carry it well." She kissed his forehead. The attic grew dim, and Elliot slept. The next morning unfolded like a slow yawn. A pale gold mist clung to the cottage windows, and the sound of rain had softened into a hush, as if even the storm was stretching in its sleep. Elliot awoke beneath his star-stitched quilt with the sense that something had shifted. Not in a loud or alarming way, but in the way leaves turn toward the sun. Subtle, steady, certain. He sat up, the little silver watch still in his palm. It ticked gently, a rhythm that matched the soft drumming of the rain on the roof. As he listened, it felt less like a watch and more like a memory he'd always carried, only now remembering it was there. Downstairs, the cottage stirred. Clocks chimed softly, some in the distance, some near. The hearth crackled again, the scent of tea and warm honey drifting up the stairwell. Elliot rose, washed his face in a little basin beside the bed, and pulled the heavy shawl around his shoulders. When he descended the stairs, the clockmaker was already awake, humming to herself as she dusted the shelves with a feathered brush that looked suspiciously like it once belonged to an owl. She turned with a smile, her ribbon a deeper red today. "Good morning, Keeper," she said. Elliot blinked. "Keeper." She nodded toward the watch in his hand. "It's not just for telling time. It's for keeping it, for listening to it, for helping others remember what the world tends to forget." Elliot looked down at the watch again, then back at her. "I don't know how to do that." "No one does," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Until they begin." After a simple breakfast, strawberry jam on warm bread and black tea with lavender, she led him to the door at the back of the cottage. It was small and round, with a brass handle shaped like a question mark. Elliot had never noticed it before, and when he stepped toward it, he had the strange sensation that it had only just grown there. The clockmaker handed him a key, long and thin with teeth like the branches of a tree. "Where does it go?" he asked. She smiled, but her eyes were soft, serious. "To the place where time keeps its memories." With a small twist, the lock clicked, and the door swung open. Elliot stepped through. What lay beyond was not what he expected. Not another room, not even another hallway. It was a world. At first, he thought it was a forest. Towering shelves stretched toward a sky made of parchment and ink. The air shimmered with dust motes, floating like lazy fireflies. Each shelf held books, thousands of them, their spines etched with symbols, runes, and languages that felt familiar and forgotten all at once. But it wasn't just a library. It was alive. He heard breathing soft and content, the creaking of ladders that moved on their own, the flutter of pages turning without hands. Somewhere nearby, a kettle whistled faintly. He took a step forward, and the floor beneath him, wooden and moss-lined, welcomed his weight without a sound. A voice spoke, not loudly, but from everywhere. "Welcome to the Library of Lost Hours." Elliot turned slowly. No one stood there, but then a figure emerged from behind a stack of towering atlases. A tall, robed being, their face hidden behind a mask shaped like an hourglass. The mask was blank, save for two small openings through which gleamed eyes the color of polished copper. "You are the Keeper," the figure said. Their voice was neither man nor woman, old nor young, but something deeper. "Timeless. We have been waiting." I don't know what I'm supposed to do," Elliot said. "You are not here to do," the figure replied. "You are here to see." They gestured, and the floor shifted, not moving exactly, but remembering something it once was. A pathway unfurled, lined with lanterns that lit themselves as Elliot passed. As they walked, the masked guide explained. "This library holds the forgotten hours," they said. The moments that slipped between pages. The seconds that were too small to notice. The dreams that people wake from too quickly. Each book holds a memory. They stopped beside a low shelf. The guide reached for a book and handed it to Elliot. Its cover was deep blue, etched with silver stars. No title. He opened it. At first, he saw nothing. Then slowly, like fog clearing from a mirror, an image formed. A little girl in a yellow raincoat stood at the edge of a lake, holding a kite that refused to fly. Her lips trembled, but she smiled anyway. Behind her, a dog barked joyfully, leaping into the water. Elliot could smell the wet earth, hear the quiet hope in her voice as she whispered, "Maybe tomorrow." When he blinked, the image faded. "That was real?" he asked. The guide nodded. "Once. Brief. Lost. But remembered here." They moved deeper into the library. Some books glowed softly. Others wept quiet tears. A few giggled when touched. Elliot saw volumes containing lullabies forgotten before sleep finished. Farewells never spoken. Kindnesses offered without need for thanks. Then they reached a spiral staircase made of quartz and clock gears. The guide paused. "At the top is the Hall of Reflection," they said. "Every keeper must go there." Elliot climbed. The air grew clearer with every step, like rainwater filtering through stone. At the top, a round room stretched wide and open, its walls lined with tall, arched windows showing not the world outside, but memories within. One window showed a beach where two children built a castle that vanished in a single tide. Another showed a hospital room where a woman squeezed her daughter's hand before falling asleep forever. Another showed a hallway where someone stood just out of frame, waiting for an apology that never came. And in the center of the room was a mirror, but not a mirror for faces. It reflected moments. Elliot stepped before it. His breath caught. He saw himself at age 6, watching his father fix the fence in the rain, too shy to ask if he could help. He saw the way his father looked back once, smiled, and patted the wood beside him, an invitation Elliot never accepted. He saw the quiet pain in his father's eyes, not disappointment, just longing. He blinked. Then he saw another memory. His mother, humming as she kneaded bread, her hands white with flour. She looked tired, but peaceful. He remembered the smell. He remembered being too busy to help. Tears welled in Elliot's eyes. "Why are these here?" he whispered. "To remind you," came the voice of the guide. "That time is not only what we live, it is what we miss. And in missing, we learn." Elliot nodded. He stood before the mirror for a long time, letting the moments settle, letting them become part of him. When he finally turned, the guide bowed. "You are ready." Elliot walked back down the staircase. The books whispered as he passed. Some opened slightly as if peeking. Others sighed. Back at the entrance, the guide placed a small leather-bound journal in Elliot's hands. "For your hours," they said. And then, like mist fading under sun, the library was gone. Elliot stood again in the clockmaker's cottage. The door clicked shut behind him. The clockmaker was there, holding a fresh cup of tea. "You saw it," she said. He nodded. "I did. And what did you learn?" Elliot thought for a long time. "That time is made of moments," he said at last. "And moments matter, even the small ones." She smiled, eyes glistening. "Then you're ready for the rest." Outside, the rain fell quietly, and the clocks, every last one, ticked in perfect peace. Elliot awoke with sunlight in his eyes. Not the bright, shouting kind of light that barges through windows, but the slow spilling sort, like honey over a spoon's edge. It lit the ceiling beams in soft gold. Somewhere downstairs, something sizzled in a pan. The scent of cinnamon and orange peel drifted through the air. For a moment, he lay still, listening. No ticking. The clocks had quieted. Not stopped, but resting. He rose from the little bed under the quilt of stars and moons. The shawl was folded at the foot. His clothes, dry now, were neatly draped over a chair. He dressed slowly, like someone returning to themselves after a long dream. Downstairs, the clockmaker stood at the stove. "You slept long," she said, without turning. "But not too long." "I dreamed," Elliot said. She nodded. "Everyone does. The midnight hour makes sure of it." He sat at the table, where a plate of warm scones and sliced apples waited. Steam curled from a cup of something herbal and bright. Outside, the rain had stopped, though the air still held that hush, like the world taking a deep breath after a long story. "What happens now?" Elliot asked. The clockmaker poured herself tea. "Yeah? You carry it." "The watch." "No," she said gently. "The thread. The one you picked up when you stepped off the map." Elliot touched the watch in his pocket. It ticked softly against his fingers. "Remember," it said. "You don't mean stories," he said. "You mean time." She smiled. "They're not so different." They sat in quiet for a while, eating, sipping, letting the morning be itself. At last she said, "The attic will close soon. The library already has your name. It will call when it's ready. What if I can't find my way back?" "You will," she said. "When the hour is right, the path will open. Doors know the ones who've heard them speak." He stood, reluctant but ready. "I should go." "You should," she agreed. "But first, your coat." She handed it to him, warm from the hearth. Inside one pocket, he found a single folded page. On it, a map, but not one of roads or rivers. A memory map. Moments marked like stars. The first raindrop. The tea. The clock with no face. 7 chairs. The attic door. "Keep it," she said, "for when things feel too big or too quiet. It will remind you that there is always something waiting to be remembered." Elliot opened the cottage door. The forest stood bright and green, the path dappled in sunlight. Ferns unfurled like invitations. The tall trees whispered to each other, the way friends do after someone wonderful has just left the room. He turned back once more. The clockmaker stood in the doorway, her red ribbon fluttering. "Will I see you again?" he asked. She didn't answer with words. She only reached up and tapped her heart once and then pointed to his. Then she closed the door. It didn't latch. It didn't lock. It just waited. Elliot walked. Every step felt lighter, not because he left something behind, but because he carried something forward. Years passed as they do. Elliot grew. He grew in the way trees grow quietly but deeply. He studied clocks. He listened to people. He wrote things down. He wandered often and always kindly. In time, he became known as someone to whom stories could be told and kept. He carried the watch always. It never lost time, but it never needed winding. On hard days, he would press it to his ear and listen. It was never silent, never rushed. When the world felt too fast, Elliot slowed. When others forgot how to dream, Elliot remembered. One winter, many years later, when his hair had started to turn silver at the temples, he heard it again. That rhythm. The clock's calling. The forest waited just as he had left it. No signposts. No markings. Just the hush of tall trees and the velvet moss path that led him, once again, to the clearing. And there it was. The clockmaker's cottage. Smoke from the chimney. A flicker of golden light in the window. A shape in the doorway. Not the clockmaker. Someone new. A girl, young but with old eyes, wearing a watch that shimmered faintly. She smiled when she saw him. "You're right on time," she said. Elliot smiled back, stepping into the warmth. And somewhere, far above, in the attic with the blue-painted door, the blank-faced clock ticked once. Then rested. For now. The story ended here, but not really. Stories like this only sleep, they never truly stop.